Spindle's findings were front and centre at our next get-together. The vampire summed it up for us. Visual aids dancing on the table. Von Neumann self-replicating R selector. Seed washes up and sprouts skimmers. Skimmers harvest raw materials from the accretion belt. Some perturbations in those orbits. Belt still unsettled. Haven't seen any of the herd giving birth, Spindle remarked. Any sign of a factory? Sarasti shook his head. Discarded maybe. Decompiled. Or the herd stops breeding at optimal N. These are only bulldozers, Bates pointed out. There'll be tenants. A lot of them, eh? Spindle added. Outnumber us by orders of mag. James. But they might not show up for centuries. Sarasti clicked. Do these skimmers build fireflies? Burns Caulfield? It was a rhetorical question. Spindle answered anyway. Don't see how. Something else does then. Something already local. Nobody spoke for a moment. James' topology shifted and shuffled in the silence. When she opened her mouth again, someone indefinably younger was on top. Their habitat isn't anything like ours. If they're building a home way out here, that's hopeful. Michelle, the synesthete. Proteins. Sarasti's eyes were unreadable behind the visor. Comparable biochemistries. They might eat us. Whoever these beings are, they don't even live in sunlight. No territorial overlap. No resource overlap. No basis for conflict. There's no reason we shouldn't get along just fine. On the other hand, Spindle said, technology implies belligerence. Michelle snorted softly. According to a coterie of theoretical historians who've never actually met an alien, yes, maybe now we get to prove them wrong. And in the next instant, she was just gone, her effects scattered like leaves in a dust devil, and Susan James was back in her place, saying, "Why don't we just ask them?" "Ask," Bates said. "There are 400,000 machines out there. How do we know they can't talk?" "We'd have heard," Spindle said. "They're drones. Can't hurt to ping them, just to make sure. There's no reason they should talk, even if they are smart. Language and intelligence aren't all that strongly correlated, even on Earth." James rolled her eyes. "Why not try, at least? It's what we're here for. It's what I'm here for. Just send a bloody signal." After a moment, Bates picked up the ball. "Bad game theory, Suze. Game theory." She made it sound like a curse. "Tit for tat's the best strategy. They pinged us. We pinged back. Ball's in their court now. We send another signal. We may give away too much. I know the rules, Amanda. They say if the other party never takes the initiative again, we ignore each other for the rest of the mission, because game theory says you don't want to look needy. The rule only applies when you're going up against an unknown player," the Major explained. "We'll have more options the more we learn." James sighed. "It's just, you all seem to be going into this assuming they'll be hostile, as if a simple hailing signal is going to bring them down on us." Bates shrugged. "It only makes sense to be cautious. I may be a jarhead, but I'm not eager to piss off anything that hops between stars and terraforms super Jovians for a living. I don't have to remind anyone here that Theseus is no warship." She'd said anyone. She'd meant Sarasti. And Sarasti, focused on his own horizon, didn't answer. Not out loud at least, but his surfaces spoke in a different tongue entirely. "Not yet," they said. Bates was right, by the way. Theseus was officially tricked out for exploration, not combat. No doubt our masters would have preferred to load her up with nukes and particle cannons as well as her scientific payload, but not even a telemattered fuel stream can change the laws of inertia. A weaponized prototype would have taken longer to build. A more massive one, laden with heavy artillery, would take longer to accelerate. Time, our masters had decided, was of greater essence than armament. In a pinch, our fabrication facilities could build almost anything we needed, given time. It might take a while to build a particle beam cannon from scratch, and we might have to scavenge a local asteroid for the raw material, but we could do it, assuming our enemies would be willing to wait in the interests of fair play. But what were the odds that even our best weapons would prove effective against the intelligence that had pulled off the firefall? If the unknown was hostile, we were probably doomed no matter what we did. The unknown was technologically advanced, and there were some who claimed that that made them hostile by definition. Technology implies belligerence, they said. I suppose I should explain that, now that it's completely irrelevant. You've probably forgotten after all this time. Once there were 3 tribes. The optimists, whose patron saints were Drake and Sagan, believed in a universe crawling with gentle intelligence, spiritual brethren vaster and more enlightened than we, a great galactic siblinghood into whose ranks we would someday ascend. Surely, said the optimists, space travel implies enlightenment, for it requires the control of great destructive energies. Any race which can't rise above its own brutal instincts will wipe itself out long before it learns to bridge the interstellar gulf. Across from the optimists sat the pessimists, who genuflected before graven images of Saint Fermi and a host of lesser lightweights. The pessimists envisioned a lonely universe full of dead rocks and prokaryotic slime. The odds are just too low, they insisted. Too many rogues, too much radiation, too much eccentricity, and too many orbits. It's a surpassing miracle that even one Earth exists. To hope for many is to abandon reason and to embrace religious mania. After all, the universe is 14 billion years old. If the galaxy were alive with intelligence, wouldn't it be here by now? Equidistant to the other 2 tribes sat the historians. They didn't have too many thoughts on the probable prevalence of intelligent spacefaring extraterrestrials. But if there are any, they said, they are not just going to be smart, they're going to be mean. It might seem almost too obvious a conclusion. What is human history if not an ongoing succession of greater technologies grinding lesser ones beneath their boots? But the subject wasn't merely human history, or the unfair advantage that tools gave to any given side. The oppressed snatch up advanced weaponry as readily as the oppressor given half the chance. No, the real issue was how those tools got there in the first place. The real issue was what tools are for. To the historians, tools existed for only one reason: to force the universe into unnatural shapes. They treated nature as an enemy. They were by definition a rebellion against the way things were. Technology is a stunted thing in benign environments. It never thrived in any culture gripped by belief in natural harmony. Why invent fusion reactors if your climate is comfortable, if your food is abundant? Why build fortresses if you have no enemies? Why force change upon a world which poses no threat? Human civilization had a lot of branches not so long ago. Even into the 21st century, a few isolated tribes had barely developed stone tools. Some settled down with agriculture, others weren't content until they had ended nature itself, still others until they built cities in space. We all rested eventually though. Each new technology trampled lesser ones, climbed to some complacent asymptote and stopped, until my own mother packed herself away like a larva in honeycomb, softened by machinery, robbed of incentive by our own contentment. But history never said that everyone had to stop where we did. It only suggested that those who had stopped no longer struggled for existence. There could be other, more hellish worlds, where the best human technology would crumble, where the environment was still the enemy, where the only survivors were those who fought back with sharper tools and stronger empires. The threats contained in those environments would not be simple ones. Harsh weather and natural disasters either kill you or they don't, and once conquered or adapted to, they lose their relevance. No, the only environmental factors that continued to matter were those that fought back, that countered new strategies with newer ones, that forced their enemies to scale ever greater heights just to stay alive. Ultimately, the only enemy that mattered was an intelligent one. And if the best toys do end up in the hands of those who've never forgotten that life itself is an act of war against intelligent opponents, what does that say about a race whose machines travel between the stars? The argument was straightforward enough. It might even have been enough to carry the historians to victory, if such debates were ever settled on the basis of logic, and if bored population hadn't already awarded the game to Fermion points. But the historian paradigm was just too ugly, too Darwinian for most people, and besides, no one really cared anymore. Not even the Cassidy survey's late-breaking discoveries changed much. So what if some dirtball at Ursa Majoris Eridani had an oxygen atmosphere? It was 43 light-years away, and it wasn't talking, and if you wanted flying chandeliers and alien messiahs, you could build them to order in heaven. If you wanted testosterone and target practice, you could choose an afterlife chock full of nasty alien monsters with a really bad aim. If the mere thought of an alien intelligence threatened your worldview, you could explore a virtual galaxy of empty real estate, ripe and waiting for any God-fearing earthly pilgrims who chanced by. It was all there, just the other side of a 15-minute splice job in a cervical socket. Why endure the cramped and smelly confines of real-life space travel to go visit Ponscom on Europa? And so, inevitably, a fourth tribe arose, a heavenly host that triumphed over all, the tribe that just didn't give a shit. They didn't know what to do when the Fireflies showed up, so they sent us, and in belated honour of the historian mantra, they sent along a warrior just in case. It was doubtful in the extreme that any child of Earth would be a match for a race with interstellar technology should they prove unfriendly. Still, I could tell that Bates' presence was a comfort, to the human members of the crew at least. If you have to go up unarmed against angry T-Rex with a 4-digit IQ, it can't hurt to have a trained combat specialist at your side. At the very least, she might be able to fashion a pointy stick from the branch of some convenient tree. I swear, if the aliens end up eating the lot of us, we'll have the Church of Game Theory to thank for it, Sasha said. She was grabbing a brick of couscous from the galley. I was there for the caffeine. We were more or less alone. The rest of the crew was strewn from dome to fab. Linguists don't use it. I knew some that did. We don't, and the others are hacks. The thing about game theory is it assumes rational self-interest among the players, and people just aren't rational. It used to assume that, I allowed. These days they factor in the social neurology. Human social neurology. She bit a corner off her brick, spoke around a mouthful of semolina. That's what game theory's good for. Rational players or human ones. And let me take a wild stab here and wonder if either of those is going to apply to that. She waved her hand at some archetypal alien lurking past the bulkhead. It's got its limitations, I admitted. I guess you use the tools you can lay your hands on. Sasha snorted. So if you couldn't get your hands on a proper set of blueprints, you'd base your dream home on a book of dirty limericks? Maybe not. And then, a bit defensive in spite of myself, I added, I found it useful though, in areas you might not expect it to be. Yeah, name one. Birthdays, I said, and immediately wished I hadn't. Sasha stopped chewing. Something behind her eyes flickered, almost strobed, as if her other selves were pricking up their ears. Go on, she said, and I could feel the whole gang listening in. It's nothing really, just an example. So, tell us. Sasha cocked James' head at me. I shrugged. No point in making a big thing out of it. Well, according to game theory, you should never tell anyone when your birthday is. I don't follow. It's a lose-lose proposition. There's no winning strategy. What do you mean, strategy? It's a birthday. Chelsea had said exactly the same thing when I tried to explain it to her. Look, I'd said, so you tell everyone when it is and nothing happens. It's kind of a slap in the face. Or suppose they throw you a party, Chelsea had replied. Then you don't know whether they're doing it sincerely, or if your earlier interaction just guilted them into observing an occasion they'd rather have ignored. But if you don't tell anyone, and nobody commemorates the event, there's no reason to feel badly because, after all, nobody knew. And if someone does buy you a drink, then you know it's sincere because nobody would go to all the trouble of finding out when your birthday is and then celebrating it if they didn't honestly like you. Of course, the gang was more up to speed on such things. I didn't have to explain it verbally. I could just grab a piece of consensus and plot out the payoff matrix. Tell, don't tell along the columns, celebrated, not celebrated along the rows. The unassailable black and white logic of cost and benefit in the squares themselves. The math was irrefutable. The one winning strategy was concealment. Only fools reveal their birthdays. Sasha looked at me. You ever show this to anyone else? Sure, my girlfriend. Her eyebrows lifted. You had a girlfriend? A real one? I nodded. Once. I mean, after you showed this to her? Well, yes. Her eyes wandered back to the payoff matrix. Just curious, silly. How did she react? She didn't really. Not at first. Then, well, she laughed. Better woman than me, Sasha shook her head. I'd have dumped you on the spot.